I'm Kevin Butterfield, the director of the John W. Kluge Center at the Library of Congress. It's my great pleasure to introduce today's speakers. The Kluge Center, by the way, is one of the sponsors of this year's festival. We're proud to help bring America's most beloved writers here to join us. The Kluge Center works to bring scholars to work in the collections of the Library of Congress for up to a year to study intensively and extensively and to produce great works of the sort that you get to hear about at the National Book Festival. Welcome to everyone who's joining us live on C-SPAN today. We're proud to partner with C-SPAN again this year for today's event. Our next program features R.K. Russell in conversation with Roswell Encina. Russ made history in 2019 by becoming the first active NFL player to identify as bisexual. His new book is titled The Yards Between Us, a memoir of life, love, and football. Roswell Encina is the Chief Communications Officer at the Library of Congress. Please join me in welcoming them.
Thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Russ. I finished your book this week, and it's such a beautiful memoir. It's very honest, very profound. I think it's a little bit of a love letter to the relationships in your life, your mom, but I think especially the men in your life. When I mean your stepfather, your biological father, your childhood friend Hoops, your best friend Joe, and of course all your teammates. How did your relationships with these men impact you?
I mean, that was the foundation of what I built my manhood off of. What I discern of my masculinity, of my identity here in this earth is very much a culmination of all of these people. My stepfather, for example, I lost him at a very young age, but still his messages ring true to me today. That the character of a man isn't off how big you are, how strong you are, how intimidating you are, but off of your word and your character, of saying things and following through, of being dependable and accountable for people, and that's something I carry with me to this day. Hoops, my childhood friend, who I consider a brother now, is someone who has taught me resilience, who has survived heartache and loss and being abandoned by his own family and becoming a part of mine, my best friend Joe, about the heart and about morality and really seeking out to be the change in people's life, to be a light, and to be someone that people can lean on. My biological father, even though he was not in my life for most of it, even an example of the things maybe not to do, of the false steps that we can all take as young men, and of the heartache and the importance of healing from that trauma so you don't continue those cycles. All of these men, teammates as well, have taught me about the things that it truly means to be a man. And those things have nothing to do with sexuality or how much money you make or like I said, how big you are being a football player or not being. It's about how you affect people, how you show up in people's lives, the things that they say when you're not in the room about you, and the things that they'll say about you when you're gone.
You talk about a lot in the book about the struggles you had when you were a young man. How did you get through all that, and who did you lean on to make sure you could get through it unscathed?
A multitude of people. My mother, first and foremost. It's funny because I do talk a lot about the men in my life, but the one constant throughout all of this is my mother. She's my best friend to this day, and she taught me so much just by being herself and being who she is, that there are no limits and bounds to what you can do as a person in this world. She had me at a very young age. My mother got pregnant at 19 and had me at 20. As a single black mother in America, a lot of what she heard was of the things she couldn't do, the person she couldn't be, the statistics that we fell into, and she exceeded all of them. She was never too woman for something. She was never limited. She got her master's while raising me as a single mother, and just was always there in my life, to the point where even when I was drafted by the Dallas Cowboys, the first thing I did was move my mother in with me, because I knew that she would be that foundation. She would be that rock for me. So yeah, it's funny because I learned, I think, the most about being the man also from a woman. And I think that is pivotal, because also as men, we exist here with multiplicity of people, with women and non-binary people, and we need to understand how we fit into these molds, how we should break these molds at times, and how to coexist with all types of people and uplift each other.
You also mentioned that, let me read this, that sports has given me a lifeline. And you mind if I read a part from your book here?
Please.
It says, you wrote, "Football was how I found peace in high school.
how I obtained a scholarship to a top university, how I attracted most of my love interests. Football was how I made friendships that became brotherhoods, and when no one else wanted me, football was home.
Yes. Yeah, there's so much of my identity that I put in football at a young age, a lot of it for my benefit, some of it to my detriment. Football, especially growing up in Texas, is a pivotal part, I think, of just culture there. I say it's the 3 F's all the time: is family, faith, and football. And though my family a lot of times didn't look like others' people's, though I did not attend church regularly like others did, football was something that I could lean on, something that I think preceded all of those things when they saw me, in something that, as the outside world began to value it and value me for it, I began to do the same. I try to tell young athletes, and really all people in general, that of course it is okay to sacrifice things to achieve your dream and to succeed in the profession, in the interests, in the creative hobbies or activities that you love, but it was never okay to sacrifice yourself. And that is a thin line when walking the line of football, something that becomes so obsessive in your life. And I think that as much as I love football, as much as it gave me brothers in the shape of teammates and mentors, in the male figures and coaches, and family and purpose and education, I also let it take things from me. Like my uniqueness, like my love for self, my individuality, the ability to challenge the things that I was told about being a man or about being a black man in America, and I let it encompass all of me. You know, it's okay for it to be a huge part, but football is not all that I am, and it took me a long time to unlearn that.
Let's talk a little bit about football here. You received a scholarship at Purdue. You played on their football team. For the folks in the audience that do not know what red shirts are,
Yes.
could you explain to them what red shirts are and what did being a red shirt teach you?
Oh,
Like,
yes.
what life lessons did it teach you?
Yes, so redshirting is essentially when you commit to a college or you go to a college to play on their team, but for whatever reason that first year you have to sit out. For me, it was because I was a bit undersized. I was tall and athletic, but I was kind of small to be a defensive end. So it was basically a coach telling me that I needed to go work out and eat and get bigger if I wanted to play in this league, which I agree, which I did do. But there, of course, are benefits to it. Like I said, you get to learn the game, you get to be around the college atmosphere and your other athletes and teammates and really be in those practices going against, for me at the time, Big Ten starters, All-Americans, and things of that nature, seeing what it takes, and you get the extra year to kind of prepare and compete. And you still get 4 years to play after that, which is amazing. And for me, it was very vital. But it also comes with hardships. Like, I moved from Texas to West Lafayette, Indiana to play football, and for a year I wasn't doing that. For a year I was told that you were good enough to kind of be in the building, but not good enough to be out there on the field. And that is a knock at your confidence. It's a knock at, the sacrifices that I've made up to that point to be there. And it comes with its own unique challenges.
One of my favorite parts in the book is when your mom surprised you for your birthday. You guys drove around and you landed at where the Cowboys play.
Yes.
So it was your very first NFL game. It was the Dallas Cowboys versus the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yes.
Then, not sure if they're Cowboys fans or Eagles fans, but your life kind of went full circle there. Then a few years later, you get a call from Jerry Jones when you were drafted to the NFL. What was going through your mind then?
That they better call soon because it was the 5th round and I was stressing. But no, it's amazing. Like you said, that full circle moment. My mother and that birthday gift and surprising me with that game was so pivotal in my journey because before then, though I played football, there was such a disconnect for me in the NFL. These were people that were larger than life, that were playing on this TV screen, and I assumed that everything that they did was something that I could not achieve or couldn't aspire. It wasn't even my realm of thinking at the time. But going to see that game and seeing that though these men were huge men, that they were still playing on the same 100-yard field I was playing on. They were still playing with the same type of ball that I was playing. It was still the same rules in the same game. Made it so much more achievable for me. And when I get the call in 2015 to be a Dallas Cowboy and I hear Jerry Jones' thick country accent say my name, it's validating. Like I said, I've sacrificed so much in that time period to be a football player and achieved a dream just by being drafted that most people never achieve in their life. But also as a professional then at that point, you realize that it's time to go to work. It's time to show up. It's time to capitalize on all of the things that you've done up to this point. And just in terms of my personal journey, college was where I was starting to understand that I wasn't straight, that my sexuality, for whether it was gay or bisexual, because I didn't have a lot of information about bisexuality at the time, that whatever it was, I wasn't straight. And that was another thing that I just put under the box of sacrifices for sports. And getting drafted, in my mind, validated that. I was like, well, I'm glad that I didn't have a boyfriend or become open about my sexuality because I made it to this point.
What people don't realize, I think, once you're in the NFL, we all assume, the money's pouring in, and all the hard work is paid off already. There's a lot of work, aside physically, but there's a lot of mental work that needs to happen too, because you never know if you're going to get re-signed, then you never know if you're going to be staying with the team, if you're going to get injured. How was it going from the Cowboys to the Buccaneers?
At first, it was devastating. The Cowboys were my hometown team. They were the team that drafted me. I think there's pride in every player where you want to fulfill that. We all wanted to be, at that time, like Jason Witten and play there forever and retire there, which even he ended up going somewhere else. But you want to be that cemented figure in your team. You want the people that decide to bring you into the room to be right and to be correct and exceed those expectations. And getting cut from the Dallas Cowboys was my moment of basically, oh shit, I messed up here. Is this something I can even do? I went, even before going on with the Buccaneers, I went on several tryouts that did not work out. I went to go try out for the Jets. I went to go try out for the Patriots. In each tryout, I felt a bit of myself being chipped away as I got more and more no's. And to go to Tampa Bay and have, in my opinion, my kind of like least best workout, it to be that humidity drenched in sweat and for a team to say, you know what, we're gonna sign you to the practice squad, we're gonna give you a chance, was like that reignition and that glimmer of hope that I needed to really kick it into second gear. I also remember that was a time where I was like, okay, there's no more funny business in my life. Like I'm not hanging out with friends as much. I'm not gonna be, I can't be the hometown hero anymore. I'm not gonna date. I'm gonna just focus on football. And life has a funny way as soon as you kind of try to shut all the doors and focus on one thing of showing you the broader picture and where your focus should lie. And that happened to me.
When you were in Tampa, something really big happened in football. This is when Colin Kaepernick kneeled during the national anthem. The whole nation, witnessed all this, what was happening with the NFL at the time. Tell me what was happening behind the scenes. How were players deciding if they need to kneel? I mean, it seemed like a probably easy decision to do it, but what were the kind of factors that players were weighing on?
Yeah, there was so much going on. I think, especially in the NFL, people have a perception of what it is, but honestly, we really just talk football or talk sports in general most of the times. Guys share and we have more moments, but we're there, some of us there almost 12 hours a day, strictly for football. And that was the first time where the discussion in such a large scale was about something so much more. I think that there was a lot of misinformation. There were players who didn't understand what the kneeling was about. There was executives and coaches who didn't understand. I know that was the first time where the Glazer family, the owners of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, came to speak with all of the team. And to come up with what they believe to be solutions or to address the problem, but also to figure out how we could get all the players to stand for the anthem and to support the game of football in what the anthem represented. So it was a bit of a mess, if I have to be honest, at that time.
You struggled with it too, whether you had to
course.
kneel or not. So.
Yeah, I mean, because the anthem means so much to so many people. And also, police brutality, specifically in social injustice for Black people and people of color, also is something that affects me and my family and everyone that I know. It affects all of us, whether we are people of color or not. And these are two very big things. I've had family be in the military. My brother currently hoops, he's in the Army. My dad, Tim Thompson, was in the Air Force. Was in the Navy. My granddad was in the Air Force. There are so many things, like I said, that the anthem represents to so many people. It is a conflict. But to me, the message and the conversations were being had, and I think that was the important part. I think it was an opportunity for the NFL to jump in on the discussion. I don't think at that time they really did that.
Let's talk about the league there for a second. They jumped in, made some changes. Yeah. What do you think of them? Do you think it's enough? I know that it's a major culture change that needs to be done in the league, but is the league on the right path when it comes to this?
I think the league is on a good path. I think as we navigate, there's always missteps. There's always better paths to make. I think it's also the representation of the league is so vast. Like you have younger people who are watching football. So it's like, how do we get the message to them in a way that is both digestible but also meaningful? doing things like putting end racism in the end zone is something that a lot of, I think, the audience would see as, okay, that's cute, but what are we actually doing? The NFL is also funding change, funding Black-owned businesses, women-owned businesses, social initiatives, hopefully trying to be more proactive about issues instead of reactive. So I think once you really look at the landscape of things that they're doing, they are making an effort. I think the NFL also just has a tall task because they're a huge organization. So there will always be room to do more, but I think they're open to having those discussions and listening to people who come to the table and challenge them in what they do and what they think.
We'll get more to the NFL later on, another subject matter. As you all heard, this year's National Book Festival's theme is Everyone Has a Story. And Jason's story is a very trailblazing story that we believe everybody needs to hear. The Librarian of Congress loves to say that books broadens our world, but it also needs to be a mirror to everyone's world so they get to see other people's stories. And I think this is where your story comes in very importantly. You, in your book, mentioned a lot how you struggled with your sexuality and your happiness versus your career. I mean, that's football and the league. And let me just read this thing and we'll tee it up right after that. You said, the questions in my head grew louder. Self-doubt about my sexuality and my identity overflowed into worries about the future. There was a bitter irony in how I was shrinking away from a dream even as my hard work had brought it within reach. The NFL wanted me, but only because they didn't know the real me. I mean, I don't want to. That must have been something really hard to wrestle with. You worked hard your entire life for this moment, then what do I do, kind of thing.
Yeah, football is one of those things, those unique things that, though it is a job at that level, it is one of the few jobs where it calls to your manliness or your character, like who you are as a person. I think that's something that we focus a lot on in NFL players, kind of like what that dialogue is, but we don't understand that it stems from childhood, that when you pick up a football at a very young age, people tell you what type of person you need to be to play this game. And some of it's correct, like you kind of need to be a little crazy to go and hit other people at full speed and get up and do it over and over again. But there's rhetoric, specifically misogynistic rhetoric of don't throw like a girl. There's being tough, which is of course important, but not kind of blocking out all emotions. The get up and rub some dirt on it works in effect to some effect, but it does not work for all of your life obstacles. And I think when you focus so much on the type of people that can play football, you're really saying what type of people can't play football. And I grew up with that, as all of, if not most of the players in the league did as well. When I realized that I didn't necessarily fit that type that I'd been told from a very young age was the football player, the strong, masculine, straight, hard-nosed, non-emotional person, I thought, then am I not a football player? Do I not belong here?
I think that was the hardest part, I think, when I was reading your book. You struggled a lot with both, depression and maybe binge drinking. How are you today?
Oh my, not drinking, thank God. No, thank you. Yeah, no, I'm 4 years sober September. So that'll be awesome. Yeah.
Well, we wish you well on that. So
Thank you.
This month is the 4-year anniversary when you wrote that essay that was published on ESPN. I'm going to read a little quick excerpt, then we'll talk about that. You wrote, "I want to live my dream of playing the game I've worked my whole life to play and being open about the person I've always been. Those two objectives shouldn't be in conflict. But judging from the fact that there isn't a single openly LGBTQ player in the NFL, NBA, Major League Baseball, or the NHL brings me pause. I want to change that. For me, for other athletes who share these common goals, and for the generations of LGBTQ athletes who will come next." When you were in college, I believe, Michael Sam came out.
Yes.
Then most recently, Carl Nassib came out. He's currently probably the only NFL player who's a free agent who is out. Let me ask you this. What do you think it will take for more professional male athletes to come out? I know it's gonna be a major culture change. Should it start with whether it's the league or teammates or the owners or the sponsors? I mean, it's a major undertaking, and I know you've taken this to task, but what do you think needs to change for more players to feel more comfortable coming out?
Yeah, I think it has to come kind of from both sides. I think we have heard a little bit more about how the league feels about its own inclusion and diversity. Players have come forward to talk about just accepting a player for the merit of their game and their heart and their hard work. I think all of that is great. I don't think we've had really that same message from ownership outside of like Robert Kraft. I don't think we've had that same messaging when it comes to the marketing and promotion, when you show and you see on TV or in commercials or in the stadiums of what type of people are allowed to be fans, let alone allowed to be players. I think it's really making sure that you ingrain inclusion into the base of your foundation, into the base of your organization, to hire LGBTQ plus people, even if they're not out players, as coaches, as executives, as administration, all of these things, as referees. The game in and of itself needs to be more inclusive for people to feel comfortable. You cannot ask someone what will make them feel comfortable if you don't have people around that understand their experience. Then you're just kind of like treating a wound instead of actually the problem and the cause of it. But I personally, though I work very closely with the NFL and with professional players in the sports culture, I truly believe that the most change will come with the youth. I believe, like I was saying, a lot of that is in culture that we hear at a young age. A lot of that is about losing LGBTQ plus athletes growing up because they don't feel included in sport, because they don't feel supported in sport. And I think once we fix that problem, because that's going to affect more people are going to play at the public school level, at the city league level, even at the collegiate level, than in the professional level.
So you think it should start like since from the very beginning, like when kids are playing touch football or they're in their little league baseball games, and start the culture change there?
Yeah, I think that's important. My goal is not to have every professional player that's out or that's LGBTQ plus come out. That's a great goal. But to me, it's to have LGBTQ plus players get into sport young, stay in sport, and to go into professional leagues already out, already being their true selves, being valued for that upfront, that face value by teams, and being allowed to just play the game that they love as themselves.
I read a little bit of your essay from ESPN. When you published that and when you did your interview on ESPN, how did you feel? That must have been a huge weight off your shoulders.
Oh my gosh, I describe it, I think, in my book as coming up for air for the first time and not realize that I've been drowning my whole life. I mean, there are things that I've done that to this day I am so proud of. This book being one of the top, being drafted, going to college and graduating, but coming out is still probably my number one because it wasn't about football. It wasn't about other people or what they thought of me. It wasn't to, at that time, make a statement even. It was for me. It was me choosing my own life. It was me choosing to live whatever time I had on this earth for me and to prioritize myself first. And it's something that I think everyone should do for themselves. It's something that I think, that sentiment that I think everyone should have at some point in their life. Because at the end of the day, this life is ours. And regardless of the things that we like to do or the activities or the sports that we play, we have to live with ourselves.
Since 2019, you've seen a lot of fans, a lot of people be reading your book. What kind of reaction are you getting from either fellow athletes or just people on the street?
I mean, any reaction that I've gotten mostly has been positive, which I'm very thankful for. But honestly, it's the broad sweeping kind of, if I had to pick a similar sentiment in all the interaction that I have, is thank you for telling the story. Thank you for having this discussion in a field, especially like male sports, that has not and is still shying away from the subject. Regardless of whether we like to admit it or not, we all know someone that's LGBTQ+. We are probably all related to someone that's LGBTQ+. And if you don't have that connection or no one comes to mind, then that means someone in your life is suffering. That means someone in your life is shrouded in shame and secret and is too either afraid or don't feel safe enough or are just, for a multiplicity of reasons, not living a full and loving life as they should be. And that is what this book is about. That is the message that I'm trying to convey, that we need to love people where they are at, that we need to allow people to be themselves, that we need to not judge people before we know them. I think a lot of the times we talk about things as if they are just topics, as if they are just things on a sheet to check yes or no to, when these are really connected to true people's lives, when these are really points that people are agonizing about day in and day out.
I do want to say, like, you closed the book by talking about your new opponent, and which is hate.
Yes.
I'm going to read this little quick excerpt too. I'm no longer strapping on a helmet and shoulder pads every day to clash with other individuals. Today, my opponent is hate. the idea of hate, how we teach it to younger generations, how we fund it with our dollars, and the systems that uphold it. Hate is the true opponent of all of us. The idea that someone of a different color, gender, religion, or sexuality is lesser than anyone else. That's the opponent. I don't have to tell you. There's a lot of that going on, whether from book banning to everything else around the country. How do you want to play a part in fighting that?
Oh, any way I can. Honestly, I think we all have a different piece to play in this battle against hate. I think that we've all at some point felt like we were told we couldn't do something or we couldn't be something, or that something in our lives was incorrect just based off of who we are, where we were born, how we were born, what we look like. And I don't think that's fair. I don't think that we should limit human beings by things that are beyond our control. My color, for example, being one of them. And I think that's the importance also of intersectionality, of being both a person of color and a bisexual person, is that I see the way that this idea forms different rhetoric around a multiplicity of topics. That is why I will stand with anyone who feels as though they're being oppressed, who feels as though they're being erased, silenced, pushed down into the foreground, because that has happened to me in so many ways. And if I allow it to happen to you, then in some way I'm allowing it to happen to me, I'm allowing it to happen to others. I'm okay with that idea, and I think that is what we need to all be on the same page about. We're gonna discuss things. We're gonna have different points of view. That's the beauty of being human. But at the end of the day, when someone tells you that they're hurting, when someone tells you that they're under attack, when someone tells you that they feel unsafe, or they feel like they are not meant to be here by an outside force, that is when you need to listen. That is when I think the discussion kind of needs to stop and the listening needs to start. And we need to hear what people are truly feeling and how we can help them.
We're going to be taking some questions here shortly. There are 2 microphones here on the aisles here, so feel free to line up and I'll point to you when if you have a question. Let's talk about coming out still. We were talking about how hard it is for men or professional male athletes to come out, but it doesn't seem the same on the female side. I believe in the World Cup right now, there were about 86 women who were out among all the soccer players around the country. Why do you think it's easier for women to come out?
Multiple reasons. I also believe that, me personally, I believe that women are constantly at the foreground of change in our country. I think that women are constantly challenging the status quo. I think that, women lead our society in many ways. I think as a woman, unfortunately, being here in the States, you're told from birth the things that you can't do. And I think women have built up the resilience to automatically say, no, you don't define me. I think that attributes to women's sports. I think also more in the problematic sector of things, that sports, I've talked about the misogyny of sport, and that these young women that are in sport have been told that in some way they are less women for being in sport. I think then once you kind of take off that, as negative as that is, you take off the shackles of then what their sexual identity is presumed to be, and they're allowed to just be themselves in a league. I think that women's leagues are also built by women. I think that women's leagues are representative of the women that are in them. We talk about the WNBA all the time and being in the forefront of not just LGBTQ plus and diverse inclusion, but in social change and using their voice and their platform, because that is a league run by women.
And I think the same that we were talking about earlier. I think when young girls are playing, it's kind of like this, the culture is there to make things hopefully easier for them. We have a question, our first question.
Yes, very proud to hear your story and see that you were true to yourself. I was curious, what were the reactions of your teammates and management after you came out?
Yeah, my teammates, whether it be from high school or college or professional, were very supportive of me. Everyone that knew me personally mostly had very nice things to say. If anyone outside of that sphere, even other players in the league, felt negatively or indifferent about it, they didn't tell me, which I appreciate. But no, I received so much love and acceptance and support.
Well, that's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Congratulations on your book.
Thank you.
I'm interested in the process.
Yes.
Did you just say, I'm going to just write it? Did you do a little every day? Did you do just the whole process of it?
Of course. This book was probably the culmination of almost 3 years It started with that coming out essay in 2019, sharing my story and feeling how not only it affected other people, but how liberating it was for me and wanting to do that at large. The process was something that I was also kind of handheld through, fortunately. I had an agent very early on who read the essay and loved my writing and wanted to expand that and to make this dream come true. I wrote in flurries through 3 years. There were 2 months, my boyfriend can attest, there were 2 months where I didn't do anything, and there was like a month where I was just in a dark room in a haze typing forever. Writing was challenging, therapeutic. I cried, I screamed, I hated it, I loved it. It was everything. I say to this day that, including playing in the National Football League, that writing this book was the hardest thing I ever did in my life, but it's also one of the most fulfilling. And I had a great team, great editors, needed a lot of editing. And we finally got to something that felt good for me and for my story.
Before I get to you, you talk about your writing. I forgot to ask you this earlier. You mentioned how it saved you as well. You've been writing since you were younger. You wrote some poetry. How did writing really help you kind of maybe internalize and kind of really help you maybe act like a little, feel like therapy for you?
Yeah, I mean, we talk a lot about the social issues here in the constructs, even the norms, the societal agreements that we all adhere to, whether we know it or not, just by being complicit in this world and in certain things. But there's none of that in writing for me. Writing was such a judgment-free zone. It was a zone where there were no rules, where I didn't have to be anyone I wasn't, where I could be someone else if I wanted to, where I could jump into a book and experience something so far removed from what my own experience was and create empathy around it, or see a vision that I wanted to cultivate in my life. And that was something that I constantly sought out in writing, that regardless of how the world saw me, I could grab a pen and a piece of paper and create my own image of who I am and who I'm meant to be in the life that I want to live. It's something that still draws me to things like this, to be honored, to be a part of such an amazing program with so many authors who have challenged the status quo, who have wrote their own stories and shed light to so many things that I, even as a person in the space, was unaware of. Writing will continue to be, I believe, the truest form of communication and connection for me, and it's something that I value so much.
Wonderful.
Hi, I saw that your book is being turned into a television show, and I was wondering how sort of that process is going for you, if you're sort of involved in like the hands-on writing and how it feels to have your life being adapted into something that's made for a larger audience.
Yes, I would like to first say that there is a strike happening right now in Hollywood with the YGA and the SAG, and I very much support that. That's very important that everyone feels as though they have fair wage, fair compensation, protections. So that's first and foremost. But in terms of this book and the series, I've been honored to have the option come from Gabrielle Union herself, to be in conversation with her, to have Sony Pictures then take that on as well in development, and been asked to be a co-executive producer and a co-writer. So I'll continue to be writing and telling stories and trying to bring this book to as many people and this story to as many people as I can, and also a chance to tell other stories. It's supposed to be a comedy, so hopefully I'm funny, and we can make that happen. And I think for that part, to laugh and to know that you're going to sit down and have a good time makes talking about things like this a little easier. No one really wants to sit down and watch an hour-long, I believe, an hour-long berating or lecture or all the things you should be doing when you're doing this. But I think more people would love to come to the table and have a good laugh and love each other, and hopefully at the end of it understand each other a little bit more. But the process is great. Gabrielle Union's amazing. It's a dream to work on. Hollywood is crazy in good ways and in not good ways. But it's truly just, I'm honored to be able to tell stories.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Hey, congratulations again on your sobriety. I'd love to hear a little bit more about how getting sober might have been connected with the other happenings in 2019 in your life.
It definitely was. I came out late August of 2019, and then after a long weekend of kind of looking at my life and being like, oh my God, what have I done for the better and for just the different, I realized that alcohol was no longer serving me in my life. I realized that a lot of the times when I could have been seeking healing or understanding or reflection, I sought out alcohol instead. And though I might not have had what people would classify as an addictive personality or alcoholism, I knew that alcohol I had a negative relationship around it, and that it never made anything in my life better. My partner, Corey O'Brien, is also sober. He's 10 years sober as well. So seeing someone live a life of sobriety and live a life of connection and still be in entertainment and doing what they want and achieving their dreams and having that guiding light was huge in my own journey.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, congratulations again on your book and your ability to be your authentic self. I'm wondering whether or not, as you move from one team, professional team to another team, from Dallas to Tampa Bay and so on, and the teams that you tried to go to in between, do you feel like you were discriminated against because of your sexuality, that you may have been able to hang with some of those teams if you had not, if there was not have been an indication that you might of bisexuality?
Yeah, I can say that I'm not sure about that experience. I wasn't out at the time, and there were a multitude of reasons why teams turned me down that all also made sense to me. Even being the proud football player I am, I understand that. I will say that after coming out, though I was getting calls prior to after coming out, I did not receive any more calls from leagues. I can also say that I think the evidence that there's only one out active player right now in the league is evidence maybe not of discrimination, but that there is not enough being had to make players feel comfortable and included. I also talk about in this book the choice that I make in my life, not to chase conspiracy and not to wonder of the things that could have, should have, would have for me and personally, because my life is so full and I believe that I'm in my purpose now. But I want those people coming up at the league to not have that fear of being discriminated against, to know that regardless of how they identify, they will be judged purely off of their ability to help a team win, and that is my goal today.
Yes, ma'am, with the Festival of Books t-shirt from LA. So.
Thank you. Thank you so much for coming. I was wondering, I'm also bisexual, and I was wondering about your journey between finding that out, because I know a lot of people like struggle between, am I gay, am I bisexual, and I was just wondering what that journey is for you.
Yeah, same. I had the same struggles in college. I was figuring out that I wasn't straight, but bisexuality a lot of times did not feel like an option. It felt like I was told that bisexuality were gay individuals who were afraid to say that they were gay and holding on to a bit of masculinity, which even if that is the case for someone, I understand that as well, that it is scary being LGBTQ+ in the world, that a lot of the times we do what we can to survive or to blend or to be accepted. But for me, it was kind of lack of representation, lack of story, and lack of overtly accessible information about bisexuality that made my journey a little more challenging, I would say. Unfortunately, I entered a lot of relationships to learn about myself. I think that's what we do as young people, but I look back at it like, I probably shouldn't have done that. But no, it was, I think, drawn out, I would say, because a lot of the times I was having genuine relationships and feelings with both genders, and I just didn't see bisexuality as a landing spot. I had to really say to myself that this is who I am. At that time, I didn't know anyone else who was bisexual. Of course, after coming out, there are so many people that are bisexual. And it's about, why aren't we hearing those voices? Why aren't we hearing those stories? Why aren't we seeing those people put in the forefront? And that's a little bit of what this is about too. So thank you for sharing as well. I appreciate that.
Thank you for creating a resource.
Thank you.
Thank you for writing this book. My question is about, in your work on eradicating hate, my question has to do more specifically with what would you say to an African-American male boy who liked football or liked sports, felt like, I don't think I'm straight, but lived in an environment where there's hate, bullying. What would you say to them to give them hope?
Oh my gosh, with any LGBTQ+ person, especially, my priority first is about safety, that there are environments and places where being yourself or being othered in any way is a direct conflict to your safety. So I would say to prioritize your safety first and foremost over all things. I'm not of a rose-colored glass perception that just be yourself and everything will be great, that there are a lot of true challenges and true systems. I would tell them and point them to the people, myself, or the people in their own community areas doing the work to make sure that LGBTQ+ youth are safe and protected. I would hopefully point them to a resource that they have, if not within their community, then online, that they can access and talk about, because every situation is also very different. But I will let them know that there are people out there just like you, that you being who you are is what makes you special and beautiful and bright, and it is your superpower, whether you are shamed for it or bullied for it or not. And that regardless of where you are now, you can find the community, the love, the joy, the happiness. You don't need to change. The world needs to change, and we're working on that.
Unfortunately, we're running out of time, so we only have time for one more question. We'll take it from you.
Actually, you just answered my question. I'm a marching band mom, though, and I want to say thank you to you because you're the first football player who ever had anything I needed to hear.
Oh my gosh, thank you.
Thank you. So we'll take one question from you.
Okay. Hi, I just wanted to say thank you so much for sharing your experience. Truly, truly wonderful. And my question was with intersectionality with like other sports, what do you think the NFL can do better? Like I know MLB has like Pride Nights and stuff like that, and certain other sports do other things for that. Where do you think the NFL can improve in that regard? And do you think there's like some intersectionality between like MLB athletes, NBA athletes, and like NFL athletes that we can learn from, kind of?
Of course, I think every major sports league either has a lesson to learn or a precautionary tale of what not to do. I think looking at MLB and NBA, they have ambassadors of LGBTQ+ inclusion that were also players. I think that can be done. I think, like I said, intentionally building out the LGBTQ+, or honestly just the diversity, inclusion, and equity divisions in the NFL can be done. I think looking at the WNBA and the female sports leagues, listening to the players and have them lead social change and be the forefront of that, I think is very important as well. I mean, the list really goes on. The possibilities are really endless, but I think at the forefront, it's about building it into your foundation. Make sure that the people in the room making the decisions are of the communities that they're making the decisions about.
I can't end this without having
we gotta
ask questions. So
there you go.
So as a trans and bisexual boy, I've been having a little bit of trouble with my identity. So like, what would you say about like finding yourself? Like, what would you say about that?
Oh my gosh. I would say, honestly, that it's a journey that even at the age of 31, I know that I do not know everything about myself, but that you and hopefully everyone around you has given you the opportunity and the freedom to learn, to discover, to identify and re-identify and figure it out, to challenge your own concepts and the concepts around you of who you should be or who you are. I think that as time goes on, you will feel more yourself. I think you will find people that see you for you and love you and accept you as just as you are, and that it's okay to challenge the world around you. The world around you is not perfect. It's ideas made up by other people. It's okay to challenge ideas. And I love you. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
And that is such a perfect way to end this session. RK Russell, everyone.